The abrupt chime of the doorbell shattered the stillness of my apartment, dragging my attention away from the dim glow of the TV. I glanced at the clock. It was already 10 p.m. Who on earth would show up at this hour? With a reluctant sigh, I rose from the couch, a tangle of unease and curiosity tightening in my chest. When I opened the door, I froze. It was Carol. Her face was ghostly pale, her eyes swollen and red, as if she'd been crying for hours. For a fleeting moment, it felt like the world held its breath. 2 long years had passed since I last saw her, yet her presence brought a deluge of memories crashing over me. Some sweet, most bitter. A knot twisted in my stomach, the ghost of a wound I thought had healed. That night came flooding back, a night that left me scarred and broken. "What do you want?" The words slipped out, harsher than I'd intended, heavy with the weight of our history. Carol hesitated, her posture caught between regret and resolve. "I need to talk," she said, her voice trembling as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. I shut the door behind her, the sharp click of the lock sounding ominously final. She perched on the very edge of the couch, looking as though she might flee at any moment. My thoughts raced back to that night, the night when everything fell apart. It had started like any other evening. I'd just come home from work, tired and eager to unwind. But when I walked in, there she was. Carol stood there, dressed in a way that ignited something dark in me. Anger, frustration, maybe even jealousy. "Carol, where are you headed?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm as my gaze lingered on her outfit. "To a party with Owen," she replied casually, barely glancing up from her phone. The name alone made my blood boil. "You know how I feel about him," I said, my voice tinged with a frustration I couldn't suppress. "This isn't just a simple night out, Carol." She rolled her eyes, dismissing my concern with a scoff. "It's just a party. Stop overreacting." My heart pounded, fury bubbling to the surface. "If you walk out that door tonight, don't bother coming back. This is your last chance, Carol." But she didn't even flinch. Without so much as a backward glance, she left, slamming the door behind her. The sound felt like the closing of a chapter, or perhaps the start of an entirely new one. I was left standing there, gutted, as if she'd driven a blade straight into my chest. Hours later, the shrill ring of the phone cut through the silence of my restless thoughts. It was Laura, Carol's so-called best friend. Her voice dripped with mockery. "Hey, Leo. Heard Carol's out with a real man tonight," she sneered, her laughter tinged with malice. "Where is she?" I demanded, my stomach sinking as dread clawed at me. Laura didn't answer directly. Instead, she let me hear the chaotic noise of a party in the background. "Listen closely," she said, her voice filled with twisted glee. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white, and then I heard it. Carol's voice, her laughter mingling with the sounds of strangers. That was the breaking point. Blinded by rage and despair, I grabbed a bag, emptied our joint accounts, quit my job, and drove off into the night. The miles blurred together as I left my old life in the rearview mirror. Headlights pierced the darkness, but the emptiness inside me was far deeper. I thought of the dreams we had built together, now reduced to ashes. And yet, as I drove further away, a strange sense of liberation began to take root, tangled with the sharp sting of betrayal. For 2 years, I convinced myself I'd moved on. I'd buried those memories, that pain, alongside the life I left behind. I carved out a new existence in Eagle's Nest, Colorado, where the towering mountains and crisp air gave me a sense of peace. I thought I was free, until she showed up on my doorstep, like a ghost I tried to forget. My mind spun in a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, anger, confusion. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice strained as I struggled to stay composed. "A private investigator," she admitted quietly, guilt flickering in her eyes. "I've been searching for months. Please, just let me explain." Her voice broke as tears filled her eyes. Then, she told me everything. About that night, about the party, about Laura, how she was dosed with illegal substances, how she hadn't realized what was happening until it was too late. "I thought I was with you," she stammered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. "I didn't want any of it. I never wanted to hurt you." For a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly smothered by the bitterness that had been festering inside me for 2 long years. "You think that makes it okay?" I snapped, my tone sharp and unforgiving. "You made the decision to go to that party. You ignored everything we had, everything I warned you about." She opened her mouth, likely to defend herself, but I raised a hand, silencing her. "Don't," I said firmly. "You left. You walked away without a second thought. You chose them over me, Carol. I don't even recognize who you are anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with unspoken accusations and painful memories. Carol dropped her gaze, her fingers fidgeting in her lap, twisting and untwisting nervously. I noticed her hands trembling, the weight of her regret seemingly crushing her. But no matter how vulnerable she looked, the anger within me refused to fade. "Leo," she whispered, her voice so soft it was almost lost in the stillness. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. "Scared," I repeated, disbelief lacing my words. "You think being scared justifies what you did? You made that choice, Carol. You walked into that situation after I warned you what would happen." She looked up, her eyes filled with desperate pleading. "I thought I was making a choice for myself," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't think it would hurt us. I thought I could have a little fun, just one night, without it affecting anything." I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Did it ever occur to you that your actions might have consequences? You didn't just hurt us, Carol. You destroyed everything we had. You left me that night. You walked out the door, and you didn't even stop to think about what it would do to me." She hunched forward, her shoulders slumping as if my words were a physical weight pressing down on her. "I know," she said quietly, her voice heavy with regret. "I know I messed up, but I was naive. Laura kept telling me it was just a party, and I believed her. I didn't think—" Her voice trailed off, and her face crumpled under the weight of her own guilt. The memories surged, vivid and painful. The heated arguments, her indifference, the way she dismissed every concern I voiced. That night, when she walked out, felt like the final nail in the coffin of everything we'd built together. The sound of the door closing behind her had echoed in my mind for months, a grim punctuation mark to the end of us. "After you left," I said, my voice steadying as I relived the events, "Laura called me. She didn't just tell me where you were. She mocked me. She made sure I knew you were with Owen, that you'd chosen them over me." I sat there, listening to your laughter through the phone, while I sat in our home, alone, wondering where I went wrong. Carol flinched as though my words had physically struck her. "That wasn't my intention, Leo. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said coldly. "You let it happen. You threw everything away. For what? A single night of so-called fun?" My voice sharpened. "You made your choice, Carol." The tension between us grew unbearable, the air thick with the weight of all that remained unsaid. I could see the storm in her eyes, a battle between anger and sorrow. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook. This confrontation had been brewing for too long, and now that it was finally here, I had no intention of backing down. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you love?" I asked, my voice low and steady, yet edged with pain. "To have your world flipped upside down by a choice you never even saw coming?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but before she could respond, I cut her off. "Don't say anything. There's nothing you can say to change what's happened," I said, my tone calm but resolute. "You left. You made that decision. I didn't know what was going to happen," she pleaded, her voice breaking under the weight of her desperation. "I didn't know I was being drugged with banned substances. Take advantage of me." Her words faltered, her panic evident. "Leo, I didn't realize what Laura was doing until it was too late." Her confession hit me like a punch to the gut. The rawness in her voice, the panic in her eyes. It was a new kind of pain, sharper and more confusing than the rage I'd grown used to. It was a tragic story, no doubt, but it didn't erase what had already been done. The past was etched in stone, unchangeable. You think I don't feel for you? I asked, my voice sharp, bitterness threading through each word. I do, but your choices brought us here. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did to us. The room felt heavy, the tension pressing down like a storm about to break. I watched as the fight drained out of Carol, her defiance melting into a deep, consuming sorrow. She wasn't the same woman who had walked through my door earlier. Confident, determined, sure of herself. Now she looked lost, as though she were drowning in her own regret. I sued Laura and Owen, she said quietly, her voice trembling under the weight of her admission. I won. The settlement gave me the resources to find you. I thought if I could just explain, maybe we could start over. Her words landed flat, hollow, devoid of the meaning she hoped they would carry. You think a lawsuit can fix this? That it can undo everything we lost? I shook my head, the frustration simmering in my tone. It doesn't work like that, Carol. A single tear slipped down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, as if trying to erase her regret along with it. I want to fix this, she said, her voice trembling, filled with a desperate plea I couldn't entirely ignore. I want to show you how sorry I am. Sorry doesn't cut it, I said, my voice rough and edged with pain. It doesn't change the fact that you broke my trust. You made the decision to walk away from our marriage for one night of so-called freedom. And I can't forget that. She flinched at my words, the weight of them sinking in. For a moment, I saw the full depth of her remorse etched across her face. But even that didn't soften my resolve. It didn't erase the damage. It didn't make me want to go back. Carol, I said, my tone soft but unwavering. You need to understand something. You broke my heart when you left, and no matter how awful your experience was after that, the choice you made is what ended us. She took a shaky breath, as though my words were physically knocking the wind out of her. Leo, please, she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. I don't want to lose you again. I've changed. I want to be better. Even as she spoke, I knew the truth. There was no going back. The wounds ran too deep, the trust shattered beyond repair. The life we'd built together had crumbled into nothing more than a ghost, a memory that haunted the edges of my mind. I don't think you can, I said quietly, sadness mingling with finality in my chest. You made your choice, and now we both have to live with the consequences. Her pleas hung in the air, thick with desperation, as if she were grasping for something already slipping through her fingers. The tension was unbearable, and her eyes, full of sorrow and longing, pierced me like a blade. Just then Melanie walked in. Her stride, usually so confident, faltered as she took in the scene. The weight of the moment hit her immediately. She stood frozen, her concern etched into her expression. What's going on? She asked, her voice steady, though there was a nervous undertone to it. Carol turned to Melanie, urgency overtaking her voice. You don't understand, she said, almost pleading. I was manipulated. I thought I was with him. I thought I was safe. I didn't want any of this. Melanie glanced between us, clearly trying to piece together the situation. What is this about? She asked, her tone cautious, her concern for me palpable. Carol is here, trying to drag me back to a past I've already left behind, I said, my heart pounding. She wants me to forget what she did, but I can't. You don't know the full story, Carol interrupted, stepping closer, her voice trembling with desperation. Please just listen. I've been through hell since that night. I didn't know they would take advantage of me. I thought I was safe. I thought I was with you. Her words only fanned the flames of my frustration. Your choices led you here, Carol. I shot back, my voice rising. You walked out on me. You chose that life over our marriage. I can't just look past it, I said, my voice steady but charged with emotion. The room was electric with tension, the air thick and stifling. Melanie stood beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly, a quiet but unwavering show of support. Across from us, Carol's composure cracked further, her anger beginning to rise. "I was naive," she cried, her voice trembling with a mix of frustration and despair. "I thought I could handle it, but I didn't realize how far I was falling into Laura's trap." "Laura?" I shot back, disbelief surging through me like a tidal wave. "Don't blame her for this. You knew exactly what you were walking into when you went to that party. This isn't just about you anymore, Carol." Melanie stepped forward, her protective instincts taking over. "Carol, you don't get to rewrite the past," she said, her tone firm and unyielding. "Leo has moved on, and you need to respect that." Carol's eyes widened, the reality of Melanie's words seeming to hit her like a blow. "But I've changed," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I want to be better, I thought." Her words faltered, her sorrow spilling into the silence. "I thought we could rebuild." Melanie's tone hardened further. "Leo has built a new life," she said, her words sharp but resolute. "You can't just show up and expect him to forget the pain you caused." Carol's expression twisted, her emotions shifting wildly, from anger to deep sorrow. "I didn't choose this," she whispered, the desperation in her voice almost tangible. "You don't understand the trauma I've faced. I thought I was with you, Leo. I was lost." For a brief moment, her words struck a chord, and I felt a flicker of empathy, a ghost of what I once felt for her. But the vivid memories of betrayal quickly extinguished it. "I can't forgive that," I said firmly, my voice calm but unwavering. "You chose to leave, Carol, and you need to accept the weight of that decision." The silence that followed was deafening, the tension between us unbearable. The room felt heavy, suffused with the magnitude of everything we'd said, and everything we hadn't. In that moment, I felt the vast chasm between us, a gulf too wide and too fractured to ever bridge again. Carol's tears flowed freely now, her face a portrait of heartbreak. But I stood my ground, my heart heavy yet resolute. "It's time to let go, Carol," I said softly but with finality. "We both need to move on." With those words, I watched the last flicker of hope drain from her eyes, replaced by the cold, painful reality of our broken relationship. It was over. The confrontation had reached its peak, and the bitter truth now lay bare between us. The door to reconciliation had closed, leaving nothing but the ruins of what we once were. Carol's departure was swift, her presence replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press against the walls of the room. I leaned against the door, my heart still racing, trying to process the storm of emotions that had just swept through. I dreaded this moment for so long, and now that it was over, I was left with an unsettling mix of emptiness and relief. Melanie, ever perceptive, stepped closer, her voice soft with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, though the ache in my chest felt impossible to ignore. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just hard to accept that it's really over. I thought I could handle it, but seeing her again, it brought everything back." She reached for my hand, her touch warm and grounding. "You handled it," she said firmly. "You faced her head on and didn't back down. That takes strength." Her words were comforting, but the past loomed large, casting a long shadow over the moment. "I just wish things had turned out differently," I said, my voice laden with regret. "I never thought our marriage would end like this." Melanie gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "I know," she said, her tone soft and reassuring. "But you can't change what happened. All you can do now is focus on what's ahead." Her words settled over me like a balm, a reminder that while the past might still linger, the future was still mine to shape. We fell into a quiet, comfortable silence, but my thoughts wandered to the past. Memories of laughter, shared dreams, and the life Carol and I had once imagined together drifted through my mind like distant echoes. They felt like fragments of a life that no longer belonged to me, haunting yet strangely comforting. The days that followed were a blur. I buried myself in work, trying to stay busy, but her face was always there, lingering in my thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking away, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just a reminder of the betrayal. It was also a stark reflection of the love we had once shared and lost. One evening, as Melanie and I sat together on the couch, the weight of it all pressed down on me like a fog that wouldn't lift. Melanie must have sensed my unease because she leaned against me, her head resting gently on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. I sighed, just thinking about everything, about Carol, and what could have been. Melanie tilted her head to look at me, her tone turning firm yet compassionate. "You can't carry that burden forever. You've been through so much already. It's time to let it go." Her words hit me with the clarity of truth. I took a deep breath, letting it settle in. "I know. I want to let it all go. I want to move forward." Melanie sat up, her eyes locking onto mine. "Then let's do it together," she said with quiet determination. "We can create something new, something ours. You don't have to do it alone." Her strength gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. A renewed sense of resolve washed over me as I realized I was ready to leave the past where it belonged. The weeks that followed brought gradual change. The memories of Carol, once sharp and painful, began to fade into the background. I started to rediscover joy in life's simple pleasures, spending time with Melanie, hiking through the breathtaking Colorado wilderness, and allowing myself to dream of the future again. Slowly but surely, the weight of regret began to lift. One afternoon, as Melanie and I were getting ready for a hike, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw the name. Carol. I hesitated for a moment before opening the message. "Look, I just wanted to say thank you. I know I messed everything up, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm starting over. Too. I hope you find happiness. Goodbye." A flood of emotions swept over me. Sadness, relief, and, finally, a sense of closure I hadn't expected. I showed the message to Melanie, who gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "That's a good sign," she said softly. "It means she's ready to move on. And you are too." I nodded, feeling a weight I'd carried for far too long finally lift. "Yeah," I said quietly, a small smile breaking through. "It feels like a real goodbye this time." With each passing day, I focused more on the future. Melanie and I created new memories, untainted by the shadows of the past. We laughed together, explored the beauty around us, and deepened our bond in ways that made me realize how much love still had to offer. One evening, as we sat beneath a sky full of stars, Melanie turned to me, her voice brimming with pride. "You've come so far, Leo," she said warmly. "I'm really proud of you." "Thanks," I said, smiling back at her. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Then let's keep moving forward," she suggested, her tone bright with hope. "No more looking back." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle in my chest. For the first time in years, I was free of the past, free to embrace the possibilities of the future. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, filling the kitchen with a golden glow. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the sizzle of eggs on the stove. Melanie hummed to herself as she moved around the kitchen, her energy light and infectious. It felt like an ordinary Saturday, but there was something in the air, a quiet anticipation that had me smiling as I flipped the eggs. It wasn't just another day. It was the start of something new, something whole, and I was ready for it. "Are you ready for our hike?" Melanie asked, her voice brimming with excitement. "The weather is perfect, and I packed us a picnic." "Absolutely," I said, pouring 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I can't wait. It's been too long since we've had a day just for us." As we finished breakfast, a peaceful calm settled over me. The memories of Carol, once so sharp and consuming, now felt like faded echoes. In their place was the warmth and joy I found in Melanie's presence. This was a new chapter, one I was ready to embrace fully. Once we were ready, we stepped outside into the dazzling Colorado sunshine. The mountains rose majestically in the distance, their peaks piercing the clear blue sky. The air was crisp, invigorating, and alive with the sounds of nature. The rustling leaves, the distant call of birds, and the soft crunch of gravel beneath our boots as we made our way along the trail. "This place is incredible," Melanie said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can't believe we haven't explored it more." "I know," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "It's beautiful out here, and I'm so glad we're doing this together." We hiked deeper into the wilderness, our laughter blending with the sounds of the forest. Each step felt like a declaration of everything we were building together, a life unburdened by the past. When we reached a clearing, we stopped to take in the breathtaking view. A panorama of mountains and valleys bathed in the golden light of the sun. "This is the perfect spot for our picnic," Melanie said, pulling out a blanket and spreading it on the soft grass. We settled into the moment, sharing sandwiches, fruit, and stories, completely absorbed in each other. As we sat there under the warmth of the sun, surrounded by nature's beauty, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. I'd faced the pain of betrayal, wrestled with the weight of my past, and emerged stronger than I ever thought possible. I'd learned what trust, love, and resilience truly meant, and for the first time in years, I felt ready to look forward to a future that was mine to shape. Melanie broke the silence, her voice soft but filled with purpose. "Leo, I've been thinking about something." My heart skipped a beat, curiosity and anticipation washing over me. "What is it?" She inhaled deeply, her expression serious but warm, her eyes brimming with affection. "I want us to build something real together. You mean everything to me, and I can see a future for us. One we create together." Her words sent a wave of emotions coursing through me. Hope, excitement, and a deep sense of connection. "I feel the same way," I said, my voice thick with sincerity. "You've helped me heal in ways I never imagined possible." Her eyes lit up, her joy radiant. "Then let's make this real," she said, her tone filled with determination. "No more looking back, only moving forward." I nodded, feeling gratitude swell in my chest. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "Let's create something that's ours, free of the past." As we packed up and headed back down the trail, I couldn't help but feel a new lightness. It wasn't just the physical load of our gear. It was the emotional weight I had carried for so long. The regret, the sorrow, the memories. They had been replaced with hope, with the promise of a fresh start. I wasn't the man tethered to his past anymore. I was someone who had reclaimed his future. That night, as Melanie and I curled up on the couch together, I turned to her, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Thank you," I said softly. "Thank you for being patient with me. I know it hasn't been easy." She shrugged with a playful grin, her eyes sparkling. "It's worth it. You're worth it." In that simple exchange, I realized how far I'd come. I had faced the ghosts of my past, confronted the pain head-on, and emerged stronger. For the first time in years, I felt whole, untethered from the shadows that had once held me captive. As we sat together, watching the sunset transform the sky into a vibrant canvas of colors, I knew with certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The past had no hold on me anymore. My heart was open, my future bright, and my soul at peace. With Melanie by my side, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The past was a closed chapter, and the future stretched before me, filled with hope and possibility. In the weeks that followed, life felt like a dream. Every day, Melanie and I grew closer, weaving a life together brimming with love, laughter, and shared experiences. We explored the mountains, stumbled upon new favorite restaurants, and cherished quiet evenings at home, simply enjoying each other's company. Yet, even amid the happiness, faint echoes of the past lingered, like shadows just out of reach. They didn't dominate my thoughts, but they were there, a reminder of the journey that had brought me here. One bright afternoon, Melanie and I were strolling through the park, the sun warming our faces and the gentle breeze rustling the trees. As we rounded a bend, something, or rather, someone, familiar caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized Carol sitting alone on a bench, her head bowed, lost in thought. A wave of emotions crashed over me. Confusion, sadness, and the faintest trace of anger. Melanie noticed her too and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Do you want to say hello?" she asked softly, her tone careful and supportive. I hesitated, torn between confronting a piece of my past and protecting the peace I had found with Melanie. After a moment, I nodded. "I think I should. I need to face it one last time." She nodded back, her expression understanding. "I'll be right here. Take your time." Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the bench. Carol looked up as I approached, her eyes widening in surprise. There was uncertainty in her gaze, mingled with something that resembled hope. "Leo," she said softly, her voice almost fragile. "Hey, Carol," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "Mind if I sit?" She gestured to the empty spot beside her, her expression wary but open. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, it's a nice day," I said, offering a faint smile as I took a seat. "How have you been?" Carol hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands, which fidgeted in her lap. "Trying to find my way," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "It's been hard with everything." I nodded, her words stirring a mix of empathy and unease within me. "I can imagine. It hasn't been easy for me either. But I've been moving forward. Slowly, but I'm getting there." She looked up then, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Leo, I'm so sorry for everything. I know I can't undo the past, but I've been working on myself. I needed to apologize to you properly." Her words landed with unexpected weight. There was a sincerity in her voice that was hard to ignore, but it didn't erase the pain of what had happened. "I appreciate that, Carol," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "But you have to understand, your choices changed everything. I can't just forget that." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know that I'm trying to be better. I don't want to live under the shadow of what I did anymore." Her honesty surprised me, stirring a spark of empathy for the person she was now. But the reality of what she'd done, and what it had cost, was a weight I couldn't ignore. "You're on your own journey now," I said gently, "and I truly hope you find peace. But I've moved on. I can't go back to what we were." Carol wiped away a tear, her expression shifting from regret to quiet acceptance. "I understand," she said softly. I think about you often, Leo. I regret how it all turned out." The air between us felt heavy with the weight of everything unsaid, a bittersweet reminder of what had been. "It was beautiful," I said quietly, my voice tinged with melancholy. "But sometimes, even beautiful things fall apart." She nodded, her face etched with sorrow. "I wish I could change it. I wish I could change everything." "I do too," I admitted, feeling the finality of the moment settle in. "But it's time for both of us to let go. You need to find your own way now." Carol drew in a deep breath, her expression softening as acceptance replaced the sadness in her eyes. "I know this is goodbye," she said, her voice tender. "I'll always care about you, Leo. And I care about you too," I said, my heart aching with the weight of our shared history. "But it's time for us both to move on," I said, my voice steady with finality. As I rose from the bench, a deep sense of closure swept over me, like a long-held burden finally lifted. The past, with all its pain and lessons, no longer had a grip on me. It was a chapter in my story, a pivotal one, but it was now firmly behind me. "Thank you for talking to me," Carol said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you find the happiness you deserve." I gave her a small nod, my gaze soft but resolute. "I hope the same for you," I replied, then turned away, walking back toward Melanie, who stood waiting at a distance. As I approached her, the concern in her eyes softened into a warm, knowing smile. She had been watching, waiting patiently for me to face this moment. "How did it go?" she asked gently, her voice tinged with curiosity but free of judgment. "It felt good to finally say goodbye," I said, exhaling deeply. A weight I hadn't even fully realized I was carrying seemed to lift from my chest. We've both moved on, and that's okay. Melanie reached for my hand, giving it a soft, reassuring squeeze. I'm proud of you, she said quietly, her voice filled with admiration. You faced your past with such strength, Leo. As we walked away from the park together, a profound sense of peace settled over me. I had faced Carol one last time, and in doing so, I had freed both of us to move forward. It was a goodbye that finally closed a long open door, unshackling us from the weight of what once was. In that moment, I realized I was ready to fully embrace the life I had built with Melanie. The future stretched out before us, filled with new memories, new adventures, and a love that was strong enough to thrive in the light. The days turned into weeks, and the crisp air of autumn began to color the world in golden hues. With each passing day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and joy. Melanie and I continued to grow closer, nurturing the bond we had built from the ashes of my past. Together, we created something vibrant, full of life and possibility. One evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in warm, golden tones, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. Sitting on the porch of our cozy apartment, I watched the leaves sway gently in the breeze, feeling a deep, unshakable gratitude for the life I was living now. Melanie joined me, settling into the chair beside mine without a word. The quiet between us was comfortable as always. What are you thinking about? She asked after a while, her voice soft and inviting. Just how different life feels now, I said, turning to her with a small, genuine smile. I used to feel so weighed down by everything that happened. But now, it's like the fog has finally lifted. Melanie smiled back, her eyes glowing in the fading light. I'm glad you feel that way. You deserve to be happy, Leo. Thanks for being here with me, I said sincerely, my voice thick with emotion. I don't think I could have moved on without you. She intertwined her fingers with mine, her touch warm and grounding. We're in this together, she said, her voice steady with certainty. That's what matters. As the weeks passed, we began to talk about the future, dreaming of trips to far-off places, exploring the world together, and maybe even starting a family one day. Each conversation brought us closer, deepening the love between us in ways I hadn't thought possible. One weekend, we decided to escape to the mountains. We planned a few days of hiking, camping, and soaking in the tranquility of nature. The excitement was palpable as we set up our campsite, the crisp mountain air buzzing with possibility. I can't wait to see the stars tonight, Melanie said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I've heard the night sky out here is incredible. You're going to love it, I replied with a smile. There's something almost magical about being far from the city lights, surrounded by nothing but nature. After a day filled with hiking, laughter, and shared moments, we sat around the campfire, the warm, crackling flames casting dancing shadows across our faces. The scent of wood smoke lingered in the crisp night air as we toasted marshmallows, swapped stories, and soaked in the comforting glow of the fire. When the first stars began to twinkle overhead, an overwhelming sense of peace washed over me. Moments like this reminded me of the beauty of new beginnings. I had walked through the shadows of my past, but now I stood firmly in the light of the future I was creating. Melanie leaned into me, resting her head gently on my shoulder. Leo, she whispered, her voice tinged with emotion. I'm so grateful for this moment. For us. Me too, I replied softly, my gaze drifting upward to the vast, starlit sky. This feels like exactly where I'm supposed to be. In that quiet moment, I realized just how much I had grown. The scars of my past were still there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they had shaped me into someone who truly understood the value of love, trust, and second chances. The weight of what had been was gone, replaced by the joy of what could be. As the night deepened, Melanie shifted slightly, lifting her head to meet my gaze. There was something serious yet tender in her expression. Can I ask you something? She said, her voice soft but steady. Of course, I said, sensing the importance of her question. What do you see for us in the future? She asked, her eyes searching mine, filled with hope and anticipation. I took a deep breath, letting her words sink in as I reflected. A wave of emotion swelled within me, my heart full. I see a life filled with adventure, laughter, and love, I said earnestly. I want to build something beautiful with you. A future where we grow together, face challenges side by side, and one day, create a family. Her eyes shimmered, her expression glowing with emotion. That sounds perfect, Leo, she said softly. I want that too. I leaned in closer, the warmth of the fire reflected in her eyes. Then let's make it happen, I said, my voice filled with determination. Together, we sat beneath the stars, the night sky embracing us like a quiet guardian, infinite and filled with possibility. Hope blossomed deep within my soul. The pain of betrayal, the ghosts of my past, they no longer had power over me. I had forged a new path, discovered love again, and found a partner in Melanie who made every moment brighter. With her by my side, I felt ready for whatever the future would bring. The unknown didn't frighten me anymore. It excited me. I was eager to carve out a life that was wholly ours, a life untainted by the shadows of the past. As the fire crackled softly beside us, I felt a profound sense of purpose settle into me. This was just the beginning, a new chapter brimming with love, adventure, and the promise of brighter days ahead. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was completely and utterly at peace.